The leprechaun, a diminutive figure, often associated with pots of gold and St. Patrick's Day, stands as one of Ireland's most recognizable cultural symbols. Contemporary popular culture frequently depicts these figures as mischievous, yet largely harmless beings, clad in green and bringing luck. However, the notion that leprechauns are evil highlights a darker perception that diverges from this widespread amiable image. This report aims to delve into the historical and folkloric roots of the leprechaun, examining the true nature of their character, the extent of their perceived malevolence, and how their portrayal has evolved over centuries. Particularly influenced by modern media, by contrasting traditional Irish folklore with contemporary interpretations, this analysis will reevaluate the notion of the evil leprechaun and clarify its place within the broader pantheon of Irish mythical creatures. The question regarding the leprechaun's evil nature points to a significant divergence between traditional folklore and certain modern popular cultural representations. While early folklore did depict leprechauns as menacing tricksters, their image underwent a period of softening, before specific modern media reintroduced and amplified darker aspects. This suggests a direct link between how these figures are portrayed in popular culture and how they are ultimately perceived by the public. Origins and early depictions, and the solitary cobbler. The origins of the leprechaun are deeply embedded in traditional Irish folklore, tracing back to the 8th century. The earliest known reference appears in the medieval tale The Death of Fergus mac Leedy, which features water spirits known as. These were described as small-bodied creatures who famously tricked a king into surrendering his throne after offering him 3 wishes. This foundational association with cunning and magical manipulation, rather than overt malevolence or physical aggression, is crucial to understanding their initial character. The word leprechaun itself is believed to be derived from meaning small body or from Leith Brogan, meaning shoemaker. The evolution from water spirits to land-based shoemakers suggests a transformation in their primary mode of interaction with humans. While they engaged in direct magical manipulation to achieve their ends, the later leprechaun, as a solitary cobbler, shifted towards more indirect, cunning interactions centered around their craft and hidden wealth. This transition indicates a move from potentially grander or impactful magical interference to a more self-contained, defensive form of trickery. Leprechauns are often viewed as descendants of the Tuatha De Danann, a race of gods. Leprechauns are often viewed as descendants of the Tuatha De Danann, a race of gods. This lineage places them within a powerful, supernatural pantheon, albeit as a more solitary and grounded offshoot. Their most common traditional occupation is that of solitary shoemakers, or cobblers. Often identified by the distinct tapping sound of their hammer, they are known for their preference for solitude, often described as preferring to be left alone.
Be sure to like, subscribe to Is It Real, and share this video. But if you choose to ignore me, well, let's just say you've been warned.
A significant point of cultural evolution in the leprechaun's portrayal is their traditional attire. Contemporary accounts typically depict them in green coats, top hats, and buckled shoes. Traditional folklore described leprechauns as wearing red outfits and tri-cornered hats. The shift to green is a later modernized depiction, likely influenced by green becoming a traditional national Irish color around 1642 and its popularization through various media. This visual transformation serves as a clear indicator of cultural assimilation and modernization, demonstrating how external cultural symbols and national identity can overwrite original folkloric details, thereby influencing public perception of their authentic appearance, and by extension, their overall character combines with their malevolent intent. The nature of leprechaun malevolence, mischief, cunning, and deception. The perception of leprechauns as evil stems largely from their trickster nature, which can be frustrating and deceptive, but rarely outright malicious or physically harmful in traditional folklore. They are renowned for their cunning and elusive behavior, preferring to play tricks on those who cross their path. To teach them a lesson about trespassing their territory, their tricks are primarily a means of self-preservation and protecting their solitude and treasure, rather than an inherent desire to inflict harm. This cunning is a direct response to human attempts to capture them or steal their gold, serving as an act of self-preservation and autonomy. Leprechauns employ various methods of deception, including misdirection and illusion, to evade capture. A classic tale illustrating their cunning involves a man who captures a leprechaun and demands to be shown the location of his gold. The leprechaun leads the man to a field and points to a specific bush. Since the man has no shovel, he ties a red ribbon around the bush to mark the spot and goes to fetch his tools. Upon his return, he finds that every bush in the field has been tied with a red ribbon, making it impossible to find the treasure. This story exemplifies their reliance on outsmarting humans rather than resorting to physical confrontation or overt malice. While leprechauns are generally associated with mischievous pranks, one rare, more dangerous claim suggests they may do things that are more dangerous to humans, like the spiriting away of children. However, this claim is immediately contextualized by author David Russell McAnally's description of a leprechaun as the son of an evil spirit and a degenerate fairy, yet characterizing it as not totally good nor evil. This apparent contradiction or nuance indicates that their nature is not purely malevolent. It exists in a gray area. The degenerate fairy aspect might imply a fallen or less powerful status compared to other FAA, which could explain their solitary nature, and focus on shoemaking and hoarding rather than grander, more destructive schemes. This suggests a liminal, morally complex character, typical of older folklore rather than a clear-cut villain. A complexity often lost in simplified modern portrayals. Furthermore, leprechaun tricks often play on human weaknesses, particularly greed. Their hidden treasure is sometimes believed to be a lure for ignorant people, whom they then lead astray. This highlights a didactic element in their trickery, serving as a lesson about human folly and the futility of greedy pursuits. Guardians of gold, cunning protectors. Not malicious hoarders, the leprechaun's legendary pot of gold is perhaps their most famous attribute, but its significance extends beyond mere tangible wealth. Leprechauns are considered guardians of buried treasure, often left by ancient conquerors or marauders. Their methods of protecting this gold are central to understanding their evil reputation, which is more accurately described as extreme cunning and elusiveness. The legend places the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, emphasizing its symbolic and often unattainable nature. It is important to note that the gold's purpose is not for the leprechaun's personal spending, as they cannot actually spend it. Instead, some researchers suggest this gold is primarily used as a means of tricking humans. This indicates that the gold functions as a narrative device within folklore, highlighting human folly and the futility of greedy pursuits, rather than being a literal hoard for the leprechaun's personal use. Leprechauns protect their treasure through their agility, cunning, and magical abilities, such as illusions and misdirection. They possess the ability to disappear in a flash, conjure illusions, or mislead treasure seekers on endless wild goose chases. The most well-known rule for capturing a leprechaun reinforces their reliance on mental agility and magical evasion. If a human looks away, even for a second, the leprechaun will vanish with his gold. This recurring pattern of defense highlights their cleverness and magical prowess over brute force or physical confrontation, further supporting the argument that their evil is one of wit, not malice. The leprechaun's gold is never truly meant to be obtained. It serves as a test of patience, a metaphor for greed, and a lesson in patience, wisdom, and the understanding that some things in life are not meant to be found. The true lesson, therefore, lies in the journey and the realization that some mysteries are best left unsolved, rather than in the acquisition of wealth. The consequences for humans attempting to steal their gold are typically being outsmarted and left empty-handed, rather than suffering direct physical harm. Leprechauns in the pantheon of Irish folklore, a comparative analysis of evil. To truly assess the evil nature of leprechauns, it is essential to compare them with other prominent figures in Irish folklore known for more overt or severe forms of malevolence. Comparative analysis reveals that the leprechaun's trickery, while frustrating, pales in comparison to the direct threats posed by other mythical beings. Banshees, harbingers of death. Banshees, or Banshee, are female spirits in Irish folklore, whose mournful wails foretell the imminent death of a family member. Their cries are described as eerie and capable of sending shivers down one's spine, and they can appear as an old hag or a spectral figure. However, while their presence signifies tragedy, they are primarily omens and do not actively cause harm. The malevolence of a banshee is tied to its role as a death omen, serving as a solemn harbinger, rather than an active inflictor of suffering. Pukas, unpredictable shapeshifters. Pukas, or are mischievous shapeshifters capable of appearing in various forms, including horses, goats, goblins, or even humans. Their main trait is unpredictability. They can offer insightful advice or blessings, but can just as easily lead people astray or cause havoc. For instance, a puka in horse form might invite someone for a midnight ride only to dump them into a muddy ditch, or as a goblin, it could wreak havoc in a home. Crucially, some stories describe pukas as bloodthirsty and vampire-like creatures, or even man-eating beings, hunting down, killing, and eating their victims. This represents a far more direct and dangerous form of malevolence than anything attributed to leprechauns. Distinction and malevolence. By comparing leprechauns to banshees and pukas, it becomes evident that leprechaun evil is primarily limited to frustrating human greed and protecting their autonomy, whereas other creatures pose existential threats or inflict direct harm. While leprechauns are tricksters focused on protecting their treasure in solitude, their actions are generally less harmful than the ominous forewarnings of banshees or the potentially violent and destructive behavior of pukas. The leprechaun's evil is one of cunning and frustration, not an existential threat or active malice.
Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Is It Real? Also, I compel you to share your thoughts in the comment box below.
The evolution of the leprechaun image. From folklore to pop culture icon, the modern perception of the leprechaun has undergone significant transformations. Often diverging from their traditional folkloric roots, this evolution is crucial for understanding why the query regarding the leprechaun's evil nature arises, as certain modern portrayals have re-emphasized darker aspects. During the 19th century, the leprechaun's image began to soften. Newer stories portrayed them as mischievous yet enterprising figures who outsmarted greedy humans. Lady Wilde, in her 1887 book, Ancient Legends, Mystic Charms, and Superstitions of Ireland, described leprechauns as merry, industrious, tricksy little sprites, though she also cautioned that they could be vengeful and bitterly malicious if they are offended. This period marked a shift towards a more benign, albeit still tricky character. The mass immigration of Irish people to America between 1845 and 1855 led to large Irish-American communities that embraced their traditions and folklore, including the leprechaun. The leprechaun quickly became a symbol of Celtic pride and good luck, particularly integrated into St. Patrick's Day celebrations. This adoption further solidified a more positive, whimsical image. This popularization, however, also led to the commercialization and homogenization of the leprechaun's image. They became mascots and commercial figures, such as Lucky the Leprechaun for Lucky Charms cereal, the Notre Dame Leprechaun for the university's sports teams, and Lucky the Leprechaun for the Boston Celtics. This widespread integration into popular culture often resulted in a stereotypical image that bears little resemblance to anything found in the cycles of Irish folklore. Some scholars argue that this popular image is merely a series of stereotypes based on derogatory 19th century anti-Irish caricatures. This simplification and commodification for mass consumption often stripped away the complexity and regional nuances of their original folkloric character, contributing to a distorted understanding. A significant factor in the modern perception of leprechauns as evil is the Leprechaun horror film franchise, which began in 1993. This series features a malevolent and murderous leprechaun who resorts to any means necessary to protect and reclaim his gold. This portrayal directly revived the leprechaun's historical menacing portrayal in a new, exaggerated context, contrasting sharply with the more playful and whimsical image seen in earlier films like Disney's Darby O'Gill and The Little People. This specific, impactful media representation serves as a causal link, dramatically shifting public perception by reintroducing and amplifying older, darker elements that had previously been softened for broader appeal beyond fictional portrayals. The term leprechaun economics, coined by Nobel Prize-winning economist Paul Krugman, highlights a modern negative connotation, albeit in a non-mythological context. This term was used to describe distorted or unsound economic data, specifically in response to unusually high Irish GDP growth in 2015, further illustrating how the figure can be associated with deceptive or misleading phenomena. Conclusion: reevaluating the evil leprechaun. The exploration of the leprechaun's history and folklore reveals a complex figure far removed from a simplistic evil archetype. From their origins as cunning to their role as solitary shoemakers and guardians of elusive gold, leprechauns have consistently been characterized by their wit, trickery, and elusiveness, rather than inherent malice. Their perceived malevolence is largely confined to outsmarting humans who seek their gold or interfere with their lives. Driven by self-preservation and a desire for solitude, a crucial distinction exists between leprechaun trickery and the more overtly harmful, or ominous natures of other Irish mythical creatures. As demonstrated by the comparative analysis, banshees function as harbingers of death, while pukas are unpredictable shapeshifters capable of direct violence and destruction. In contrast, the leprechaun's actions typically result in frustration or empty-handedness for humans, not existential threat or physical harm. The popular perception of the leprechaun as evil is largely a modern construct, significantly influenced by specific media portrayals such as the Leprechaun horror film series. This franchise amplified and sensationalized their historical menacing aspects, diverging sharply from the often benign or merely mischievous depictions that emerged in the 19th and 20th centuries. The persistent query about leprechaun evil reflects a common tendency for modern audiences to project human moral categories, good, evil, onto complex folkloric beings. This often overlooks the nuanced amoral or self-serving motivations inherent in traditional myths, where figures like the leprechaun operate on a different moral plane, one of self-preservation, autonomy, and testing human character rather than inherent malevolence in the human sense. In traditional Irish folklore, the leprechaun serves as a lesson in human greed, patience, and the elusive nature of fortune, embodying cunning and self-reliance rather than inherent wickedness. Their evil is a misinterpretation, rooted in a misunderstanding of their nuanced folkloric role and the significant impact of evolving cultural narratives.